few weeks back, Brian and I visited the Patterson Waterfall in New Jersey. For those that don't know, I live in New Jersey, 12 miles west of here as the crow flies. And it was a gorgeous experience. It's a big waterfall. You could take about an hour strolling around it in downtown Patterson. And the area is economically challenged these days, as so much of our country is. And the music, buskers going by with a saxophone playing quietly, the taste of cherry ices brought me back to my childhood growing up, going down the shore in Jersey, Wildwood, Asbury Park. And it made me feel like summertime again. I want to invite you to go back to your earliest memories of summer as a child. We're often wired to remember the hardest times more easily than the good times. But I found over the years that most of us have a pretty clear memory of some really wonderful, good weather day of our yesteryear. The day that sort of defines our standard for summer. The day we're always deep down trying to relive into today. I hadn't yet turned 5, this is mine, and my family just moved into the starter home that my parents still live in now, 45 years later. The neighborhood kids and teens came by to say hello, and my parents gave me permission to go out and play with them at the local park. Most parents back then were way more permissive with their kids to go out and play in the neighborhood, but I was especially lucky. We lived across from what would become my middle school later, and where my elementary school was next to it, and my church right behind it. I recall that day stretching out forever. I remember it as if I were out for 12 hours, but thinking on it, there was no way in the world that my parents let me at the age of 4 be gone that long, but I remember it like that. I was probably exhausted and hungry after an hour or two, but I don't remember it that way. My first taste of freedom on my own, even though my mom could surely see me the whole time from the kitchen window. I was growing up. I had a little more control over my choices, a time when I didn't really have any real responsibility. Do you remember when you didn't have any responsibility? How long ago was that? And we strive for that sometimes as adults. How can we get away on our own? But as adults, we're not trying to get away from mom to go play with the kids. We're trying to get away from the burdens of our duties and our obligations that sometimes weigh heavy on us. The beginning of this year, I said in a service that the word that I'm reflecting on all year is mantle, and that can have a lot of different meanings to it. And one of those meanings, mantle, is our obligations that are always, I feel them here. I don't know where you might feel them in your body. We're trying to get away from those burdens of our duties and obligations. And until we're retired, it seems increasingly impossible to disconnect from our career responsibilities fully. And what I've seen for many UUs, many of our retired UUs, obligations don't actually seem to taper off even then. They just change, and some of us seem to even get more busy. This time of year, when we catch ourselves wondering aloud to our friends, where did the summer go? It went by so fast this year. I just said it this week to some friends. For me, this was the fastest departing summer of my life so far. And if I'm honest, I probably say that every successive summer. Oh, this is the fastest one again. And I know we often joke that time seems to go by faster every year, but I don't find that to be consistently true. It's more a matter of how distracted or burdened we may be at any one moment. If we're dealing with health problems for ourselves or for someone we love, time stretches and shrinks in odd ways, maybe even at the same time. I'm starting my 16th year in the ministry this month. Thank you. In fact, I've worked for more than 22 years in different roles in congregations. Back when I started in our denomination, most of our clergy began the ministry somewhere in their 50s. So for someone to have that many years at this point, they'd be considering retirement. These days, most of our clergy are starting closer to the age of 30. A few are even finishing seminary in their mid-20s. It's been a sea change in our UU faith. A sea change that is quite similar to how our clergy started out younger 200 years ago. All of our famous forebearers started in their 20s. As I'm leaning into my second half of my vocational career, I'm getting a bit reflective. Time is a funny thing. It sure doesn't feel like I've been doing this for so long, so it's quick in a way. But I also would never say that it felt all that short. Time stretches and shrinks over the years. It's more of a matter of perception than reality, though it does have a real impact on our lives. From weddings to coaching churches through conflict, to even serving at one point some years back for 3 years as a co-chair for our denomination's continuing education program for all the clergy in the denomination. That doesn't happen for new ministers, but there's a way in which I still wonder, how did I get here? Do you ever wonder, how did you just get to this point in your life? Everything took forever, and it's gone in a blink of an eye. How did we get here? For some of it's wondering, when did retirement sneak up on me? Or for others, how did college finish in the blink of an eye? My baby is graduating from high school this year. None of it was actually quick. We can all remember the burdens, right, and trials along the way, but it still goes by in a blink of an eye. This is the fastest summer of my life. I was just visiting my in-laws for their 55th wedding anniversary on Friday, and I'm looking at my niece, who I remember meeting for the first time when she was in grade school, when my now husband took me home to the family. And we're there, and she's introducing me to her now live-in boyfriend in her 20s. And I'm like, how did that happen so fast? Where did those some 15 years go by? The mind does weird things sometimes. Often we can compartmentalize some parts of our lives, the harder struggles, and they stretch out forever. And we experience the moments of wonder and awe all too briefly. Spiritual reflection can help us with this. The old adage of taking things one day at a time is good advice for managing suffering too. Don't let everything crash down on you at once in your mind, but get through each struggle on its own. And there's a way in which we sometimes use that adage to make things harder on ourselves. I remember an old TV comedy by the name of One Day at a Time. It was about a newly divorced mom raising her 2 daughters in the 1970s. It was a very funny show. I remember watching it as a kid. It was also built on the premise that there's always going to be another struggle to overcome. I remember my working class dad telling me at some point in my teens to not to fret over money. Whatever, there's always going to be another problem. And it actually helped me to accept that in life, that when there's times of struggle, there's always going to be another one, and don't get worked up on it. Just be there. And it's true. In life, there's always going to be another struggle, some that will be incredibly difficult. But when we internalize them to the point that it defines our life, we stretch out our times of pain and shorten, again, those moments of wonder. We all struggle with this. Maybe we can move that word around to maybe one moment at a time. Moment by moment, enjoying or managing what's before us, I remember one of my mentors who's passed since the Reverend Forrest Church would teach regularly, be who you are, do what you can, and want what you have. Be who you are, do what you can, and want what you have. Letting down the burdens as they are overcome, rather than carrying the pain with us forever, the rest of our days. Only we ourselves know when it's time to move on from the weight of what we carry, but take my words as an invitation to wonder differently about how we choose or not choose to let go. Holding on to pain keeps us in a pain maybe longer than we need. And it also sometimes makes us lose track of the good in our lives. I've been experimenting with a sort of visual meditation lately around emotions that sometimes can be overwhelming. When I'm experiencing depression or anger or resentment, I visualize them as a hook in my heart, at my core, and I just take the hook out and hold it to the side. It's still there. It's not going to make it go away. But it does help me remember that this thing that's impacting me is not me. I can honor it for what it is and not become what it is. And sometimes we can't let go. It's not time. It's been an odd summer for me this year, right? So different than my childhood summers of going down the shore. I still got out to visit family out of state. The dog and I barely got walks this summer because it's 95-degree weather and the sidewalks are just going to burn her feet. It's sad in that way. And I was just lamenting, can we have a break from the 95-degree weather? And we're getting it today, along with maybe hail. We'll see. I don't know. And I think it goes by faster. There's so much in the world weighs so heavily on us these days, especially in our own nation. The news cycle is necessarily keeping our hearts and minds, our heads, in a one-day-at-a-time mode. Often anger. It keeps me focused. It's real. I'm in a one-day-at-a-time mode right now with the news. Where will democracy be tomorrow? When will the West Coast fires end? What fresh horror of white supremacy is going to be birthed in the media again? What fake outrage will stoke more hatred, likely half driven by Putin's social media troll farms? And we eat them over and over in the cycles. Capitalist-driven clickbait, and the anger comes back again. And yet still living moment to moment by moment, or mindfulness, as some of us talk in theological language, can still lend us focus and a path forward at the close of another difficult summer. In our month's theme of rest, we can choose how to internally respond to the struggles of the day. Sometimes anger reminds me that I care. That's why I'm angry. I'm still human. I worry for the day when I'm too numb to feel that. I've been there before. Some of us have been there before. And that isn't better. I'm going to paraphrase again some wisdom from Leslie Mack, one of our leaders of the Black Lives of UU movement organizing collective, that's particularly helpful to me in thinking through our process of moving forward as a religious community during a time when greed and indifference and pomposity are the rule of the day. Here are her words. Anything we do regarding policy change can be undone, as we've seen with complete clarity over the years. So it's most critical in our organizing that we do it in such a way that we are left with real and meaningful relationships with the people around us. Those can't be undone. So, as we quickly come to the close of another summer and the beginning of another school year, let us ever strive to keep reaching out to one another. What is one thing you can do to reach out, to keep connecting in your life? I just made a connection on Friday with our New York Governor Hochul's Office of Interfaith and Nonprofit Affairs, and I'm planning on meeting with them shortly. I don't know what will come of it, but I hope that it will ground us more deeply in our community here in New York City and the surrounding region, that it will better engage us. I'm also been accepted into a doctoral program in social justice leadership in the ministry. It'll be tied into, thank you. It'll be tied into my work here directly. It's a 3-year program, and I'm hoping that those connections that are built with colleagues across the nation will help inform us and engage us as a community. Connections are grown deliberately over time with each of us, in our times of action and in our times of rest. Policies can be undone. The news cycle can break our hearts, but we can deepen our relationships, and no politician can undo that for us, nor can any politician make those relationships for us. The fires of fake outrage will continue to distract us from the very real problems of the day, and the connections we make along the way are very, very real, vivid, and life-affirming. Only we can do the work of relationship building in our own lives. That's where we have agency. That's where we have power, moment by moment, day by day. Amen, and blessed be.